Hey everyone, welcome back to the Primal Blueprint podcast. Today, if you are listening to this is also a video episode. You can get that in the main show notes or go to the Mark's Daily Apple YouTube channel. Today, we are talking with Terri Cole. I'm really excited about this conversation because her latest book, which is coming out this month, is amazing, called Boundary Boss. If this is not right up my alley, I don't know what is. It's the essential guide to talk true, be seen, and finally live free. Terri is a licensed psychotherapist and a global relationship and empowerment expert. For over 2 decades, she's worked with a diverse group of clients, including everyone from stay-at-home moms to celebrities to Fortune 500 CEOs. She really has a gift for making complex psychological concepts accessible and actionable so that people really can have sustainable change in their life. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Elle. Thanks for having me.
So this is not your first book.
This is my first book.
It is your first book.
Yes.
But I thought I saw something. Maybe it was something else you wrote about, I thought I saw something else wrote. Maybe it was a blog post that I saw.
Well, I've contributed though.
Like a book title.
I have to say I've contributed to a lot of books though. So a lot of Chris Carr's books. And so Gabby Bernstein's books.
Yes.
All my friends have books and I've been contributing to that for like 2 decades, but I finally wrote my own.
So when, of all the things, all the topics you've tackled in your career, this is such a good one, but why boundaries? Why was this one the one that you were like, this is the one?
Partly is because it's what I saw in my, I've been a psychotherapist for about almost 2.5 decades. And over again, the pain points that my clients would come in talking about, whether it was conflict in relationships, whether it was not being paid what they were worth, whether it was not being able to take care of themselves, right? Overgiving, overfunctioning, overfeeling to a degree. I could literally connect the dots backwards. And the origin was this lack of knowing about healthy boundaries, how to establish them, what are they, how to communicate them, the language of boundaries, setting limits, prioritizing your own preferences. Like these are all things that as women, not only were we not taught, we were actually taught the opposite, right? We were raised and praised to be self-abandoning codependents. That's what got people to say, oh, she's so nice. She's such a good girl. So we really were conditioned out of our instincts to protect ourselves and to communicate effectively and all of that. So really it was from years and years of collecting data and being like, nobody is teaching this. And you don't learn it in school and you don't learn it at home. And in fact, you learn the opposite at home. And of course, I was a boundary disaster. So that's another reason why, you teach what you most need to learn, right?
It seems like a lot of people suffering, of the clients and other people I speak to, is always, again, related back to some boundary that they're not drawing or too afraid to speak up about something, which I guess in the reverse can be like a boundary of some kind, right?
Absolutely. It is, because how do we establish boundaries? Well, some of them are physical. Really, it's through languaging. It's through speaking up. It's through having the words to set a limit in the moment, to not answer an intrusive question. These are all boundary issues, right? Not overgiving, not agreeing to crap you don't want to do. Stop saying yes when you want to say no. Those are all boundary issues. So I think that what my goal was for the book is to demystify what are healthy boundaries. And the myths about boundaries are plentiful about if you are a boundary boss. In many people's minds, they think you're bitchy. They think you're rejecting people or confronting people or a drama queen. And those are all myths. But the truth is that you can always draw boundaries with ease, with kindness, with grace, and when appropriate, with love, because it's not always appropriate, but when it is. So I think that I wanted people to realize that it is an art form that you can learn. And you can still be yourself, and you can still be kind and giving, and you can still be the lover that you are. And in fact, you'll be more authentic in all of that giving, because now you're giving from choice, right? From equanimity, from love, as opposed to fear of rejection, not setting a boundary simply to avoid a confrontation or a hard conversation or fear of being rejected. There's so many reasons why we don't do it. But I wanted people to see, because I've been teaching it for many years. Like I've had, courses started 5 years ago to basically do the beta testing, to go, what actually works? What is most effective? What is the fastest way to gain this skill set. And that is what I base the book on.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that the people pleaser, the too nice. Oh, she's too nice. Oh, the problem with Jenny, the reason she never gets her schedule she wants at work, even though she's been here 20 years, she's just too nice.
Mhm.
No, she's a liar, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
so harsh, right? But that's really what people pleasing is, because you're talking about authenticity. And I love Robert Glover's work, No More Mr. Nice Guy, on this topic. And I know so many people who are reformed people pleasers. I am not, although I understand it. I've been on the opposite, which is people being like, she's harsh, because I'm just telling the truth, even though there's no attitude behind it. So if you were a friend of mine, you're like, hey, you want to go to this concert? I would just be like, no.
Same.
And people will be like, oh my God, because people are not used to that. However, I will say this. In my life, I have noticed that even though you get some kickback from people a little bit, or they think maybe you're mean or you're too harsh, even though then they learn you're not, I find that it's the quality they admire most about me.
Well, do you know
Because they're
why
like,
though?
she'll tell you how it is. She'll tell you the truth. People trust that because it's authentic. And so in my book, Confident as Fuck, talk about that too. If you do, my gosh, you're going to get so much more in life. Not only going to get what you want if you speak up, right? But you're going to get that admiration, and people then who love you are loving you for who you are, not for the fake little covert contract stuff you're doing with the people pleasing. I'd love you to expound more on this, because I feel like it backfires. It seems like it's protecting you, but it's a backfire move, right?
Well, the thing is, it's what you said is true. When we're saying yes, when we want to say no, we are not being nice. We're being dishonest. And so the real tragedy with women in particular not knowing this skill set is that when you continually put everyone else's needs above your own, when we claim and we insist that I'm easy breezy, no fuss, no muss, you know me, it's all good, what happens is that the people who love you don't know you. And
Yes.
how can anyone ultimately really love you if you never allow them, if you never take the risk to
Mm.
let them know you? And so the irony of this whole book and this whole movement, because really it is a boundary revolution that is happening with this book. I mean, I'm seeing it, I'm experiencing it with people. It's that your life will change. It will be you making the decisions, being self-determined in your life. And in the end, if we spend a lifetime prioritizing other people, codependency falls into this, disordered boundaries, of course,
Mm.
being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the decisions of others, we end up bitter. And what happens, I like to say it's a one-way ticket to bitter land, because that's the only stop on that train, because you can only do it for so long. And because that kind of giving is from fear, not from love, what happens is even when people are appropriately grateful, they can never be grateful enough, because we're expecting others to fill this space within us that only self-love, self-respect, self-knowledge can fill. So we can't look to our relationships, romantic or otherwise, to fill the spot that only you can fill for yourself. So we really have to think about, why are we doing that? And let's talk about, disordered boundaries. They can be too porous, which is too malleable, where you're more like the chameleon, the peacekeeper. Like I have different archetypes. I have a boundary quiz out that people can take to see like what is their
Right.
archetype basically, and it's their boundary style. But then there's also the ice queen, that when you're out of balance, it's like my way or the highway. That's not someone with healthy boundaries. That's
Mm.
also someone with disordered boundaries. It's
That's the
just
extreme in the
expressing.
other direction. I get you.
Exactly. It's just expressing it in a different way. Then you have like the loner, someone who will withdraw themselves from situations that are like too dramatic for them, or that they can't handle because they feel overwhelmed. They don't have the words to either get off the phone, get out of a relationship. So instead they withdraw. Again, a dysfunctional expression of boundaries. So all of us are a bit of a mix, but trust me, it's only 13 questions. If you go to boundaryquiz.com and you take the boundary quiz, you will see, though, most of us have a primary style, because we all have different personalities. You've got the
Mhm.
leaders and the more quiet learners and the different ones. But what I give you in the quiz is, what can you do to be more balanced? It helps you identify, like, oh, this is where I'm out of balance. And that's really what we're doing, right? We're learning a new language for sure. Because I think you can think about boundaries as a language that no one ever taught you. So when my clients would get all down on themselves, or women in my courses, like, I'm just weak, or what's wrong with me? How could I be in this situation again? I always say, listen, you wouldn't expect to, cross your fingers and pray hard enough to be fluent in Mandarin and just hope you're going to wake up
Might take
tomorrow
30
like, I'm
years. Yeah.
right, like, I'm going to know how to do this. This is the same thing. But the good news is that just because most of our families of origin, or wherever we grew up, certainly I didn't learn it where I grew up, that doesn't mean that we can't learn it. And that's why I'm teaching it the same exact way you would learn a language, right? Think of it as Rosetta Stone for healthy boundaries,
Yeah.
but it's really for being empowered. And I know, Elle, that so much of your work as well as being self-determined and being confident and being sovereign, like making the decisions and having the courage to be honest about who we are. And to do that, you have to want to know who you are. I'm curious to know what you think about this, but my sort of theory on, people talk about the authentic self as if like someday you're going to magically like turn the corner and be like, oh my God, I discovered my authentic self. And I feel like we have our nature of who we are, and we develop our authentic self by making decisions in life. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be someone who keeps my word? Then I will work at being someone who keeps my word. And sometimes I'll fail, but if that's a value for me, if I see that as a virtue, if that matters to me, it doesn't mean you will just naturally be someone who keeps their word, because it takes effort to keep your words. That makes sense. So what are your thoughts on people and their authentic selves?
I really resonated what you said earlier. Like, no one can know you. And then here's the thing: when you're not authentic, then they don't really know you. They like you for the person you're showing them. That's not really you. And then how can you trust people? I think this is where the trust breaks down, because it's like you don't really trust. Now there's resentment or covert contracts, passive aggressive behavior. I will say that my boundaries, so I never had issues with like speaking up and drawing a boundary. However, I probably had too many boundaries up. My
Mhm.
lessons, and I'm sure you've experienced this, you know this as a psychologist, when you are an alpha, in a lot of ways, and you're uncoached at first through life, you do not want to be vulnerable. You do not want to express any vulnerability, and that's not my freaking true self either. So that hurt me on the other side. So while I was able to lead and be like, nope, not doing, like, draw all the boundaries, be absolutely no shit in every way of my life, somehow I got choked up there. And that was really tough for me. I had to learn to be more vulnerable again. Like, sort of, I see that as sort of like a crappy boundary of some kind, right? Because
Yeah,
that's not the true me either, because I'm a
right.
human being who does have emotions. And I am vulnerable. Just didn't want to express it because there's no alpha out there that wants to appear as weak. This is the sort of like life cycle of alphas, right? And then on the overgiving is another thing, I think. And perhaps this is, I could be displaying this wrong, let me know. But my impression and through experience is, uh, if you had a core abandonment issue, some parent or something going on there could be some overgiving. And I believe it was sort of subconscious in terms of like, I'm going to help you and I'm going to rescue you. And then you won't leave me because I helped, which that's just a disaster game to play. But I played
Mhm.
that for a while until I realized, what am I doing and where is this coming from? And what is this? And again, being inaccessible as a person. So we'd have a conversation. You could be vulnerable and open with me, but I'm really not going to kind of share that. And then how can we get close? How can I trust that you really like me if you don't know these parts of me? And again, it's not wearing your heart on your sleeve at the bar next to the person you're talking to, but so that's kind of how I see it. Like on my side, I was overbound, like maybe over boundaried.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's called having rigid boundaries, meaning
yeah,
there's too much. But what you're really talking about also is codependency.
yeah.
And with my clients, because they're a lot of, just like you, very like, just women who are, I don't want to say ballers because that doesn't feel right, but who are masters of the universe, who are literally doing it, the CEOs, the CFOs, the owners, the founders, the people, the the pop stars, the whoever, like they're just killing it at what they're doing. And yet I saw their overinvestment in the decisions of others, the feeling states of others, the outcomes of others, and them working overtime to be like, I'm going to help and I'm going to fix, and the auto advice giving and all of those things. And so I actually coined a new phrase, because if I ever said codependency, immediately my clients would be like, are you fucking crazy? A codependent? Hello, I'm not dependent on crap. Everyone is
Right.
dependent on me. I do everything. I'm the one who has all the answers. People come to me. And when I started describing
Goes both ways.
what it actually is, so the phrase is high functioning codependency,
Right.
because it's different, because it's
Or the one
like,
that's almost creating and fostering it, the leader of perhaps that codependent relationship, if you're the one constantly I mean, it's like, that's like such an enabling move.
yes.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in such a way, though, because it's not the Melody Beatty, codependent no more, every person you're with is an addict, right? So
Right.
we had a lot of, I think that especially with my clients, there was a lot of negative connotation,
Hmm.
meaning weakness. And they're like, I do everything. Like, what are you, crazy? Like, no, that's not me. With high functioning codependency, though, it's like, imagine it's like, we used to hear Ginger Rogers described as she was doing everything Fred Astaire was doing, except she was doing it backwards and in heels.
Hmm.
That's like a high functioning codependent, where you are so capable that you can almost do anything. You are doing anything and everything. But what ends up happening is that even at the end, because I've had so many women come to me in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, where they've done it all. They've got the nice life. They're financially secure. Kids are on track or are already going to the Ivy. They don't have to worry about money. They're going to Soul Cycle. Like, they're meeting their friends twice a week. Like, they like their husband, but they feel empty.
Hmm.
They're like, what's wrong with me? Is this all there is? And part of it is that an entire life, even if it looks successful from the outside, but that is built on what you were saying before, the false self, the masks of how we should be. We should have kids who go to these schools, who are successful, who pick these professions. We should then be on all these boards and help, and we're doing all of this philanthropic work if we have, if people who have means. It's like, what is your passion? Who are you? And so with those people, and they also come in
It's
presenting
almost
with,
like an advanced, different angle and tangent of people pleasing in a way,
oh,
right? A little bit.
it
You
absolutely
know what I'm
is.
saying?
But yeah, I do. Because you have to figure out, though, who are the people that you're pleasing.
Right.
And part of it is that so many of us became perfectionists in our young lives to manage whatever chaotic system we might have been in, or we might have had a authoritarian system we were from, where the expectations were incredibly high,
Mm-hmm.
or we had one family member who was the designated patient. Let's say if you had an addict or a black sheep in the family who was acting everything out, then you felt like you had to be perfect to not add to the pain of your friend. I mean, there's a million reasons why we end up with perfectionism.
Right.
And it's something that is so painful and just sucks the joy out of life, because nothing is perfect, right? Life is messy, growth is messy, love is messy, kids are messy, like all of it is messy. So my feeling is that emptiness that people experience becomes their bottom, and it's like, now, who are you actually? And so in the book, I walk through the 5 pillars of self-mastery that I've created over all these years, of like, how does it actually work? Like, what do we need to transform most effectively, most efficiently? And I wouldn't say like hacking, people always like want to do everything short. I want to do everything efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you are smart, and that my crew is smart. People don't need to be, I'm not anti-therapy. I've been a therapist for 25 years, but you don't need to be in therapy for 20 years unless you love it. I do. I've been in for 30 years. It's my fave, but you don't need to,
Right.
because if you are given the right information and you have an ass kicking coach, me, and I'm nobody's guru. My whole thing is I'm an amazing GPS to walk you into the basement of your mind, your unconscious mind, where there is information that is in a box that you haven't opened maybe ever. That information is driving dysfunctional boundaries, inability to communicate. Because what happens is you had your experiences, I had my experiences. Any traumatic experience in childhood, a lot of times we put them away. But then what happens is we get into an experience in adulthood that reminds us of that feels just like that.
Mhm.
So we have it's a transference. I mean, that's
Yep.
therapeutically what it is, right? And that gets in the way of what we're doing because now is actually not then, right? Now is now. And so we go back and we find these peak painful experiences so that you can unpack them, integrate them, honor them, so that when you are, with your authoritarian boss, let's say, instead of turning into your 10-year-old self, I had this experience in my life where I had a boss, I was working at a drug treatment clinic, and I just like hated this guy, and I thought I had all these good reasons. I was going into my therapist, Ruth, and being like, he's just judgmental and he's cold and he's a jerk. And he's like, I interacted with him literally barely at all because anytime I saw that guy, I would literally jump into the bathroom to avoid him.
Mm.
I was
Visceral rejected feeling about this guy. Yeah.
absolutely like, I need to get away. And she was like, can you describe him one more time? And I was like, well, I mean, he's tall, he's handsome, he has dimples, he's, Brooks Brothers suit wearing, Wall Street Journal reading, probably a martini drinker. And she's like, uh, who else could that describe? And I was like, oh my God, that's my father. She's like, right. And what was happening, and that was my first like profound experience with understanding the damage of having a transference that you're unaware of. Because she's like, Tara, if you never figure out this aversion to your boss, he will never know how smart you are. You will never show him how capable you are. Don't you want a job here after you're out of school? Don't you want to? And I was like, I do. And she's like, okay, so he's not your father. Let's talk about your father. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. So that isn't just me. So I'm going to give you a quick something that you can do, anyone listening, that if you have an experience where you're like, wow, like I just did, like, why do I have this extreme response to someone where if you look at the facts, you're like, have I even interacted with this guy? Why do I hate him? So it's almost like a bigger experience than what the
Like
situation
lack
is.
of true reasons, it would be a
Yeah,
tip off. Mm-hmm.
exactly. You ask yourself, so here are the 3 cues, I call them. Who does this person remind me of?
Mm.
Where have I felt like this before? And why is this behavioral dynamic, the way we are interacting, this crazy dance that is playing out in this relationship, how is that familiar to me? Maybe you had that dance with one of your parents. Maybe you saw your parents do that dance and you weren't even in that dance at all.
Right.
And it could still be I call it, this is a relationship repetition, right?
Right.
This is
It's familiar, not necessarily healthy, but because it's familiar, we repeat it, and it could be witnessing parents do something, right?
Yes. So when you ask those questions, if I had known, I created this little, strategy so that my clients could quickly identify when they were having a transference. So we could handle the unresolved thing because you have something sticky in your unconscious mind. For me, I had something sticky that needed my attention about my father.
Mm-hmm.
When I gave it my attention, and really when I just had the realization from my therapist, I was like, oh my God, how embarrassing. Dr. Washington is absolutely not my father. Like, what is happening and how did I not see that?
Right.
But immediately my fear was gone. The next team meeting, I was like, and I want to tell you about what's going on with my client. Like, I just suddenly was like, that is, wow, he's not my dad and I'm not 10. So
Right.
the healing can happen almost instantaneously, or it's not even the healing, it's the realization that this is happening. So anyway, that
Mhm.
is something that, and we can put it in the show notes if your folks want to use it, because it's such a good thing to have sort of in your hip pocket
I love it.
when you are confused about why am I responding this way? What is going on? But it requires you to not look out at the other person and say, well, he's just this or she's just this. And we always have to look in and go, okay, let me get curious with compassion about why I'm reacting are responding this way, because trust me, you have good reasons to be responding that way, but it's dysfunctional. And this breeds dysfunctional boundaries.
Yep. Such good stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, I guess I would say that in a lot of the coaching that I do, sometimes it comes with confidence, speaking up, things like that. It's like, depending on the person and how motivated they are, it's like sometimes you got to start small. Sometimes it's just not accepting the phone call from the toxic person you're annoyed with, right? And
Yep.
then so like little, little some steps, test it out because some things are uncomfortable. Sometimes to speak up is still can be awkward for almost everybody, but it's extra fearful to the people pleaser. But I guess leading that and then into talking about like managing like boundary destroyers, as you call them, right?
Mm.
You got narcissists, you got toxic personalities, emotion manipulators. I think this is almost the easiest way to draw boundaries is to start to, and if it starts with a blow off, maybe you don't have to speak up and go, hey, you know what, you're toxic, I'm not going to be your friend. I mean, if you're ready for that level, you probably don't need her book. But you know what I'm saying? So where do we, like when we're dealing with something like that, like where are we, how can we frame it in our head to get geared up and juiced up to actually do it? Because, and this is what's crazy to me. So I don't want to speak up because I'm afraid, oh, I don't want to be mean or I don't want them to not like me, but then I'm going to suffer as a result. So I'm just going to be okay with me hating all of this, hating these conversations with these toxic people or
Mhm.
whatever the scenario is, all for it's just, it seems like that's insanity. Can you unwrap that? Why we do that? What's in there? I know it's
Sure.
a lot. I just throw it at you.
Oh, I got it though. So let's start with the how to say no, right? That there is the technique that I give in the book is the first thing is to buy time. So I have all of these scripts of what you say so that you stop the auto yes. You stop the auto yes. Get it in your mind right now. Unless like a building is on fire, and yes, the fire department can come in, there is nobody needs an instant answer from you. And if they do, those folks who love to say, I need to know right now, of course, most people in my life do not do that, but let's say they did. I say, well, if you need to know right now, then the answer is no, because I don't make decisions on the spot. Like poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency for me. I need an answer by 3 o'clock today. I don't give a shit. You know what? You
Love
don't.
it. Yep.
So if you need an answer, the answer is no. But you can build up to that and you don't have to be so Jersey. I'm a little Jersey, but you don't have to be.
Very
So
Chicago.
so you get it. So let's talk about ways that you can buy time. One is literally just, and I have a whole entire chapter in the book that is just scripts. The entire thing from top to bottom is scripts,
Yep.
every scenario you could ever find yourself in.
Boundary scripts, right?
Boundary scripts, yes, that you make your own, right? A lot of them are sentence starters, then you make them your own. But when someone says, oh, hey, we're getting together on Sunday and, we want you to come. If you are a people pleaser, if you're someone who feels like they asked, I must answer, we're changing your mindset right now. And it might be too threatening to say no right away.
Mhm.
So you're actually going to say, you know what? I need to check with my roommate, my spouse, my person, my parent, my family. I don't know. I need to check with someone. I'll get back to you. If you know it's a Sunday and you don't want to do it and you spend time with your family, you can have also some canned answers that are like, thank you so much for thinking of me. I love that you think of me. It makes me so happy. And Sundays are reserved for my family. So there's so many ways. A lot of times we bring a positive before we say no, especially with people we care about, because these people we're saying no to, so much of the time, these are people we love. They're not our enemy. And
Right.
if they're people who you have led to believe that they're very important to you because they happen to be, you are very important to them. This is where, and when I'm done with the saying no thing, we'll get into the VIP section where we really got to get clear about who's in the VIP section of your life. Because the truth is that if you don't have a rope and you don't have a list and you don't realize you're the only bouncer, then just any mother effer who thinks they're entitled to your time, your sunshine, your consideration, you changing your life to suit them, will just come in and plop themselves down. This could be a third cousin, a family member, a sister, a brother, anybody. And when I talk about your VIP section, I don't mean you should cut off contact with all those people. No, but you need to do it in the book. I walk you through an inventory of who's in your life. When you know you're going to see cousin Betty Are you like, yay, Cousin Betty, it's so awesome? Or you're like, oh crap, Cousin Betty, I'm going to be exhausted. She's going to talk about the same bullshit boyfriend shit the whole time we're together.
Right.
Like, am I going to leave there and be like, can I check Betty off the list for another 6 months, please? But you're choosing that.
That's right.
So when you do the relationship inventory, and we're really looking at, and in the book, I have a bunch of these things called back to you. So all the concepts that I teach, then back to the reader, so that you can right now in this moment be like, let me think about it. Who exhausts me? Who leaves me wanting to jump out a window? And who leaves me feeling good? Who is in my front row because they want good for me? They are cheering me on. They remember what I talk about. They follow up on things. It's not just me doing that for them, because I feel like this has been a major theme with my therapy clients, where they would have all of these people in their life, people who, some rando from like your yoga class, who's like, I have no one and I'm having foot surgery. Can you walk my dog? This is a true story. Can you walk my dog? One of my clients, just for 2 weeks. And she was like, well, okay. And she barely knew this woman. Yeah, they talked a little before yoga and maybe a little after, but never had socialized. And like 5 weeks later, she's still walking this lady's dog twice a week. And her husband's like, why are you walking some rando's dog at 6 o'clock when we're supposed to be eating dinner together? Like, I don't get it. Like, you're literally prioritizing some lady you don't know. I'm like pissed. When she
Yeah.
came in, I was like, what is the deal? Like, let's talk about, who does this person represent? What is really happening? It's not about her. You don't even know her. Right. So we know it's not about that. But through the process of understanding about how she was taught to be a pleaser, and this woman reminded her of her mother, who is very punitive and very bossy and very judgy, that we were able to go like, okay, this is what's happening. You are prioritizing low priority people out of fear. This is a dysfunctional boundary, basically.
Hmm.
And she was able to then sort of get through that and tell the lady she's done walking her dog and continued to have dinner with her husband, and things were fine. But that was a major breakthrough for that client, because that wasn't the only scenario where, because someone said, you're my best friend, like she was like, oh my God, well, how can I tell them I'm not their best friend? Well, you don't have to tell them that, but your behavior should be aligned with how you feel,
Right.
which is that it's not appropriate for someone you barely know to be like, can I put you down as the person that if me and my husband die, my kids will go to you?
Right. Like you're my
Hi.
emergency contact and we've just met 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah. So we start really discerning and making the distinction of who should be in our VIP section and why. And again, that doesn't mean that you then have to cut off contact with all those other people. It means that they go to an appropriate place in the club that is not the VIP section, so
Hmm.
that you have mutuality in your relationships, so that you are with people who fill you up the way that you filled them up, you know?
Yeah, and I think when I had to sort of get out of the overgiving, I had to stop myself when, because people would ask me of doing something I'm really capable and can do quickly, like, oh hey, can you write this letter to the insurance company for me, or like, can you, and a good friend, and I'm like, oh, give me your resume, I'll do it, or whatever. And then finally, I realized too that part of that overgiving was enabling. It was super enabling. So one time the friend called and was like, hey, I got into a car accident, I have to write the insurance letter. And my normal self would be like, yep, I got it. Let me take time out of my day. And then I was like, no. I said, why don't you do a first draft?
Always.
And you take a draft and then I'll take a look at it. And the conclusion was she nailed it. By me not enabling her, gave her an opportunity to experience something she is now so proud of herself, so confident. I'm like, oh my God, I would just change that one word. This thing is perfect. She can write, she can write a letter. And so I helped her become, and that was just sort of like,
Yes.
oh, really? What a great thing. I let go of a stupid thing and she gained something else for it. So, sometimes again, that overgiving, yeah, totally enabling of someone else, and you're helping someone by also helping yourself at the same time there, if that
Right,
rings.
but no, but Elle, that's such a great story because it's so true. Because let's break it down. Like, what are we doing when we're always in savior mode?
Yes.
We are centering the other person's problem around ourselves.
Mhm.
That is what we're doing. I had a very painful situation in my life where one of my family members, very dysfunctional. I have a lot of addiction in my family. Lots of most everyone is in recovery, myself included. But this was before that person was in recovery. She was in a terrible relationship. She was literally living in the woods without running water with a crackhead who was physically abusive. Like that's the truth of the
Like the
situation.
bottom of the bottom there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
So I was talking to my therapist, Ruth, all the time about it, crying my face off all the time, trying to throw money at it, trying to hire, trying to move, trying to do whatever I could do. So Ruth says to me, Terri, let me ask you something. What makes you think you know what Jenna needs to learn in this life?
So good.
And I was like, well, Ruth, I think we could both agree she doesn't need to learn by living with a crackhead who
That's
beats her
right.
with no water. And she was like, you know what,
Maybe she
though?
does. Yeah.
She said, I can't agree with you because I'm not God
Mm,
and neither are you.
yeah.
And I don't know. And she's like, but Tara, I want to tell you, do you know what's really going on? And I was like, obviously not. Please tell me. And she said, you've worked for 20 years to create internal peace, to create a functional life that is successful, where you're happy. And her dumpster fire of a life is really fucking with your peace. And what you really want is for your pain
Right.
about her pain to stop.
So instead of draw a boundary, you decided to fix, which was not the move apparently that you would suggest now. Is that what you're?
Well, I wouldn't. I thought to be a good person who loved her, that was being loyal. I thought I was doing the
Yes.
good thing. So I was like, wait, so you're saying I don't need to do this and take this on? And she's like, here's the thing, Tara. Not only do you not need to, but it's impossible. And what you are
Right.
doing is you are temporarily removing the pain that will be the driver for her to find her own solution. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. So I'm actually impeding
Like
her growth
disempowering.
process.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly what
It's
you said.
so interesting. It's like the back end of it. It's the other side of these things that are also, again, where right takes two to tango on it. You know, let's talk about no for a second, drawing boundaries. You know, one of the things I try to like confident people just don't justify and apologize. And this is a classic, this is a classic people pleaser thing. And it seems harsh to people, right? To just be like, no, because people are expecting it. But what's interesting is like, have you ever gotten that email from someone? You ask them one question, it's like, sorry, but I've got the kids, and you're like, shut up, I don't fucking care, just yes or no.
Right.
Nobody gives a shit about all these justifying and apologies and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, I don't care. In fact, those people are going to respect you more for just saying, you know what, no, or hey, no thanks, I appreciate you thinking of me, or not this week, or maybe another
Yep.
time, or whatever it is. But it's so funny how much, and that's what I'd say, watch yourselves, right? When you start to realize you are justifying and explaining. And going back to one of my favorite books, The Nature of Personal Reality by Seth, um, nothing in this world needs to justify. You see a fucking beetle justifying itself, you see, but yet we feel, and especially if you're in a creative profession or an entrepreneurship, there's this sort of society, hey, keep them busy, oh yeah, I got this, I got like this need to list everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one time finally, it was like years ago, someone said, hey, what are you doing this summer, what do you have going on, what are you doing? And I just go, I'm doing nothing, I have no shame about it, doing nothing, I'm gonna sit by the beach, I'm gonna go to the beach like 3 days a week and stand up paddle, and that's all the fuck I'm doing. And they were like, okay, because I was just like, that's my truth, man. I'm not going to
Yep.
sit here to try to impress you or make it look like so that I feel okay about whatever your projection is on how I'm doing my life, right? Can we get into this? Because this justification
Yep.
stuff, and no one wants to hear, right? Because when you're on the other end of it, and everybody, even a people pleaser knows, you're like, whatever, just yes or no.
Right. And how about this? So yes, this is a huge thing with boundaries and becoming self-determined
Mm.
is understanding that how you feel, what you think, what you want, your preferences, your desires, your limits matter. And they only matter if you think they matter. And they only matter if you're willing to share them. So I would say to my clients, like someone will ask me, like, hey, you want to go to Tanglewood and hear the outside music of whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't like outside music like that or bugs. So no, I'm good, but thanks. They're like,
Yep.
but it's James Taylor. I'm like, I love James Taylor, but I'll stay in my house and I don't want to. Like, how about I just don't fucking want to? Why
Right.
isn't that? And
enough.
listen, if it's someone who you love and if it's important to them, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the way we negotiate in relationships, right?
Well, I think that's the difference between, look, like, because I concert thing is perfect. I write about it in my book. My friend is a concert. She sees concerts like 5 days a week, and she knows it's not my thing because after she kept asking me, I'd say no, no, and so she got the hint. But then one day she called me up and said, I know this isn't your thing,
Mhm.
but I got this concert I'm go to. So and so is going to be there, and I kind of need a wing woman. I'm in.
Same.
That's different. That's different. That request, that's for another purpose now. That's not
Yep.
to, and that's not never doing stuff you don't want to do. I don't want to go
No.
help my friend get her car out of towed from a thing, but you do because the
Yes.
overwhelming friend move takes over the action of that sucks to drive to a car lot to get the car towed, or the
Yes.
the concert. And in that case, like I'm in, that was so perfect that she asked me that way. It's like, I know this isn't your thing. I need you though for another reason. And that reason
Yes.
resonated with me. So I think
Right.
hopefully that kind of, yeah.
Right. But let's make the distinction. Your friend gave you context.
Yes.
That context changed how you felt about it. You're motivated
Absolutely.
by wanting to help your friend. When
Mhm.
someone is asking me for a favor, as long as they're not trying to make it look like they're doing me a favor when they're really asking me for a favor, like
Right. Yeah.
just be truthful. If I say to someone, hey, I got a book coming out, I would really love it if you would promote my book. Like, it's not like, hey, let's get together and let's do this catch up. Let's just, and if you can't, your promo calendar doesn't allow it, that's okay too. But with the clarity and truth. It's funny, in the book, I tell a story about one of my friends. I don't know if you know Elizabeth D'Alto. Do you know her? She's great. She's an embodiment teacher. She's so fucking funny. I love her. She's from Staten Island, but we're like very similar. I'm from Jersey. She's from Staten Island. She's incredibly funny. And I was like, hey, I'm going to this retreat in Guatemala. Want to come? She's like, nope. Hate Guatemala. Hate Guatemala. Hate hot weather. Hope you have fun. And I was like, wow, this is why I love this person so much,
Because it's
because
so damn authentic.
she's trustworthy. So when I know, when she's giving me an honest no, I trust her yes. I trust what she's
Yes.
telling me, because my people pleasing friends, listen, I'm not second guessing. I can't. Like, I'm too help, you get past a point in your life when you can do it.
Yeah.
But back to the justification that you said, I want to talk a little bit more about that, about why it's so self-sabotaging and
Mhm.
what your rights are. And before we're done, I want to be able to do the boundary bill of rights. There's only 10 of them, but they're really profound. And I feel like they
Okay.
leave
Yeah.
us with a good thing.
We've got time.
That I had this experience years ago, and actually I didn't write about this in the book, but was pivotal for me in my relationship with my husband, where he was living in Elizabeth, New Jersey. That's where I moved to be with him and the boys. He was a widower, had 3 teenagers acting out like crazy people. It was awesome. Anyway, I would come home and it was like up top, like where the train was, and I could look down to see if he was in the parking lot. And for whatever reason, if he wasn't in the parking lot when I got out of the train, I was really sad. Like, it made no sense to me. I don't know why. And then if I got down those friggin' steps and he wasn't there, now I'm mad. So, and I do have a whole time thing. I'm better now, but like I'm a bit of a time. I don't know. Like, you got to be on time.
If you hate lateness with like a passion, then you are
Crazy.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am.
Same.
I'm a real, and that's where I sometimes need to be looser. But yeah, I'm like you.
Yeah.
I'm
Very
rigid.
rigid. Yeah. Me too. Oh my God.
Rigid.
Very rigid in that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would come down, and if he was, I mean, he'd be 12 seconds late by the time I walked down the steps. It's not like he would leave me standing there.
Right.
And I'd get in the car, and then I'm like, he's like, how was your day? I was like, fine. Looking out the window, not talking. I'm mad. I'm withdrawn in anger. I'm not communicating, but I'm pissed. And he's like, oh, made dinner. He's doing all the right things. And I'm still like hating his guts for like the next 5 hours. So then finally I was like, hey, babe, you know what? I had this realization that when I get off the train, if you're not there where I can't see you from up top, for some reason, it super bums me out. Like, not
Good for
just that
you for saying it.
yeah. And the thing, he goes, oh, okay. I was like, so can I make a simple request that you really work to be there when the train pulls in? Because when I see that you're there, it makes me so friggin' happy. He's like, great.
Yeah. What a difference in your demeanor in the car ride home. You're like, oh my God, somehow that is just like such a gift for you to see that. And the other, but this is great too. And obviously as a therapist, you would do this, but the fact that you actually told him this is how this thing, and it wasn't much of a thing for him to adjust. Such a simple thing. Why set him up for failure every time and keep
Right.
doing this to him? Right. You know, I mean,
Or
at least
yes, or
yeah.
also the whole thing about fighting, like part of it is that not fighting because I'm not much of a fighter, but being with passively aggressively expressing my displeasure, right?
This is what you were doing
So
in the car, right? Yeah.
that's what I was doing in the car. And what I realized is that I don't even need to know why something is my preference like that. I need to share with my person who I chose for like till the end of time. And even if he doesn't understand it,
Yeah.
he doesn't have to. I don't understand it. He has to give a shit because he's my person. And I
Yes.
know he doesn't want me to be in pain. So in sharing, it's like having, yes, of course, I was vulnerable because if he were someone else, he might have been like, I was only 12 seconds late. What's
Yeah. What
wrong
are you
with
talking
you?
about?
Why are you mad? You're a psycho, right? Could have been. I mean, if he were someone else, he would never do that. But
Sure.
if he did, but my point is, it's really looking at relationships when you're talking about functional boundaries and effective communication, where we're looking at it like, hey, babe, this is the problem. I'm going to say you didn't make the problem. This is the problem. And it's not you against me or me against you. It's you and me against this problem. And together we can absolutely
Yeah.
figure it out with less pain for everybody. So when we're back to your original point of not justifying and not over explaining and feeling like you need a good enough reason to say no, or you need a good enough reason to get out of a relationship. I
You
can't tell you how
don't.
many women have gotten in touch with me and said, but they didn't do anything wrong.
Doesn't
You
matter.
know what, how you feel? That's enough. Like if you're not in love,
Hey,
you're done. You don't want to have sex with them anymore. And you've talked to them and you've tried. Listen, not all, we can't marry everyone.
that's a
We
great
don't marry
distinction. It's
everyone.
like you can have a preference and just have a freaking preference.
Yes.
Just like anyone, like I mean, literally, like there's men out there who just want to date Asian women or tall women or sure. Hey, nothing wrong. Like I'm not offended by that. I'm 5 feet 2 inches tall. If you like a woman with long legs and you're attracted to tall women, no offense to me. Like that's your thing. I'm glad you know what you like. There's no talking that guy out of it, right? There's no
Right.
amount of rationality. You could be like, you should really consider women shorter than 5'8", right? It's just I have a preference. Who the fuck cares? It's here. I can't change it. And now I'm gonna tell you how to like love me and work with me in it, you know. And I've had some family members express that to me, like my mother. She doesn't want gifts. If you give her gifts, forget it. It's just not. But she wants a card. I just and it's got to be a
Yep.
nice one. Can't be a cheap card. This got
Yep.
and like it would upset her so much if you'd forget a card and you'd
Yep.
think this is so dumb. It's a card. Well, I learned my lesson. You know what I
It's
mean?
her love language, though.
That's her love
She's
language
telling
is
you,
damn card. And
she's
it's
telling
just
you,
so she told me and I listened and now it's like I got them stacked, ready to go. Stamps are ready.
yes,
It's never
you're,
forgotten. It means it to her if I send card to other family members. So I
yeah,
do that. And that's and by the way, how low maintenance is that as a request from anybody? How low maintenance is, hey, if you can make there to be on time to stand under the thing. And I'm sure if your husband wasn't one day, he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, there was an accident. I could
absolutely.
right. But he's making
Even
the
now,
effort to because something is just your preference. I love that. It's a good example.
yes, that was like 24 years ago. And even now, if he's a second late, I'm always like, babe, that
Just
is
like
it's
this thing.
okay. Everything is fine. Don't you worry. All right, you want to talk?
Yeah, go
Will you
into
tell me where
your
you want to go?
well,
The
we have
Boundary
plenty of
Bill of
time, but
Rights?
I know you wanted to go through the commandments, right?
Yeah, the Boundary Bill of Rights. This is
Oh,
something that
good.
it's so important to this process that it's literally the first thing in the book because we have to all start with the understanding of what are our rights, because I find that so many women come into my groups, my courses, anything, literally not knowing, like, am I asking for too much? Do I have the right to draw that boundary? And hey, if you're making your partner not wear those shoes because they're ugly, no, you don't. That's not a boundary. That's you just controlling him. And I think there's a lot of
Great point.
confusion about people trying to use boundaries as a mechanism of control, as
Mm,
opposed to if it's your side of the street, then you have a right. If it's someone else's side of the street, they have a right. So, anyway, we'll start with this and then
love
you
it.
tell me which ones you want to unpack. The first one is you have the right to say no or yes to others without feeling guilty. So, I think we covered that.
Mhm,
You have the right to make mistakes, to course correct, or to change your mind.
mhm.
So many of us are so loyal. We are so
Shoot.
committed to our word.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
I was going to say, and loyal or attached to a trajectory in life, to attach, just like you want to go do something else, but you've been doing this whole thing. And what will people think if you leave to become a jazz musician from a doctor? Right. So there's like a lot of
Yep.
that. That kind of resonated when you said that.
Yes. And it's so liberating when you give yourself permission to change your mind. It's so beautiful
Right.
what can happen. You have the right to negotiate for your preferences, your desires, and your needs. To negotiate, we expect people to read our minds. We're offended. We're like, they should just know. If they were raised right, they would know. They know. I let them know. I hinted. I was cool. Trust me, it got cool in there. They knew I was pissed. Why are you hinting? Please stop
Just say
hinting.
it.
Please do. Okay, you have the right to express and honor all of your feelings if you so choose. So, this is where being voluntarily vulnerable, which is what I call it, comes in, because you also don't owe motherfuckers anything. You don't owe
Right.
someone who wants to know, hey, why haven't you had a kid yet? Hi, none of your motherfucking business. Hi, where's that person you were at the party with last year? Hey, why don't you eat wheat? Hey. And so in the book, there's a million things of how do you come back? What do you say? And so much of it is don't answer the question.
Yes, because that would be on the defense. That's defense, not offense. And in that game, you're going to lose every time because now you're in a justifying wheel, right?
That's correct. And
Oh,
you know whose work I love so much? I don't know if you know her, Kasia Urbaniak. She's
mm,
a power dynamic expert. She
mm.
was what's it called? The people in the dungeon, you know, the women who are, she was the dominatrix
Uh-huh.
for years and years and studied all over the world with like female Chinese monks and all about power dynamics. And she's got this great way of getting off the spot when someone asks you something like terrible. And people, their morbid curiosity will drive them to ask you the most effed up shit. Like they will just
Yep.
ask you anything. So I had a very tragic death in my family 4 years ago. My 18-year-old niece was killed, just heart, all bad, just the worst. And literally, I had people being like, "Do you mind if I ask you how she died?" So I'd already interviewed Kasia. I was already ready to get off the spot. And you can come back and say, "Why would you ask me that?"
I'm going to say it. I love you. No, really, you are so my kind of person because again, this reminds me of the time a stranger said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a writer." And they said, "Are you like a real writer that makes money at it? Or do you like work at Starbucks, but like you have another job?" Very patronizing, said like that. Now, one friend was like, "Oh, you should have taken out your book and been like," I'm like, no, that's
Mm-mm.
fucking right into this guy's bullshit. This is what I thought. That was rude. So I called him on it. I go, that's really rude. I said, that's rude as fuck. Why would you go up to a real estate agent and go, do you actually sell houses or do you just have your real estate agent license, but like you live at home? He goes, oh, well, that's different. I go, no, it isn't. It's just fucking rude. Now, I don't always take every battle. That was one. It was just too patronizing, bullying me where I had to go on offense. But again, it was like you're saying, it was like, why would you ask me that? I said it in
Mm-hmm.
different ways, but it's the same thing. It's like, no, we're going to turn this around and you're going to need to look at what you just said to me. I'm not going to play into your shit that you just dealt me. And that's such a good move. That's such a confidence move. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to attack. I mean, I did a little bit there, but God, I felt so much better that I didn't go, well, no, but I'm actually a best-selling
Yep.
author and I have two books, right? Oh, I want
Nope.
to just, I feel gross just even
Yep.
saying.
But being able to speak up and come
I
back,
love that you see that.
um, or you can say, why would you want to know that? Right? So why would you ask me that? That's if I'm really pissed, because
Right.
that is straight up
It's a little bit, how
saying,
dare you? Yeah.
yes, it is. It is
Yeah,
saying, why would you want to know that? And it all is about your tone
sure.
as to, because sometimes someone had asked me once about, I had cancer a bunch of years ago, and they asked me about the kind of cancer I had. And I really was asking, why would you want to know that? And she was like, because my mom just got diagnosed with thyroid cancer and I want la la la. So that was also a real question. Not that I would mind telling her, but I want to know why you want to know. Like, I'm not for your entertainment. My health is not for your entertainment. My pain and suffering is not for your entertainment. And it makes the person also, it puts it back on them.
I love
You know,
this.
and this is Kasha's whole thing is you're flipping the spotlight, which means you now are in the power position, right?
Yes.
They are in the
Defensive position.
sub. Right, the sub and the dom is the way that she talks about it because
Mhm.
of what she
Yep.
had, used to do. And now they are required to look at what they've said. And so, and I have very
I
easy
love
ways
this.
of doing it too, but this is something that the most important thing is that you don't answer questions that you don't want to, and understand that people aren't even listening half the time. It's like being in interviews, right? Sometimes, like if I have an agenda, if the person is, you're a great conversationalist, but not all are, right? If someone's asking me something, I'm like, this is not what we're here to talk about. I just find my way back to whatever the hell it is I want to talk about.
Right. You're
Like,
good now. You can just navigate right back.
right. And so this is the same thing when someone's like, so how much money do you make? Right? You can be like, trust me, Bob, not half of what I'm worth. Like, we can do it light so that we're
Yes.
not punching Aunt Betty in the face, right? It's not
Yep.
necessary.
Nope.
But the key is if you walk away and you have not revealed something about yourself that you don't want to, you have drawn a boundary. Effectively, you are a boundary boss, right? And that feels good because we
Feels
don't
so
always have,
good.
right? You don't have to punch someone in the face, but the not revealing is the key, you know? Okay, moving down.
Yeah.
Hold on. You have the right to voice your opinion, even if others disagree. You have a right to be treated with respect, consideration, and care. You have a right to determine who has the privilege of being in your amazing life.
I love that because that is saying it's very similar to. I've said this before. People are like, "Oh, I'm going on this date. I've talked to her a couple times. She's really great. I hope she likes me." I'm like, nope, nope, no, no, no. You hope you like her
Yep.
enough for her to be in your world, which is why I love what you just said because that's all about. Are you good enough for me?
Yep.
It's all about
Exactly.
me and my desires, my life, my choices. I love that.
Right.
So powerful.
But you know, Elle, we fall into this thing. What if we're people pleasing or if we're super afraid of rejection, if we haven't figured out the crap in the basement,
Mhm.
then it feels like a monumental rejection every time. And I would always say to my clients, hey, 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 before we're worrying about that, maybe he or she is distancing themselves from you and not texting as much. Have we even decided if we like this person?
Yes.
Like,
By the
are
way,
they valuable?
do you think it's true? I find that people who are having issues with like a toxic person or whatever, and then you go, well, like, what do you like about this person? They don't even like and admire the freaking person. They're just too wrapped up in the like whatever they might say about them or if they will like them. And it's so funny. I'm like, what's so interesting that you would care? What's motherfucker? You don't even like this person. You don't respect them at all. You're talking all sorts of shit. Why do you care even what they think of you? I mean, if you really break it down,
Yep.
it's crazy.
But it's the child
I
within
know.
who is afraid of the paternal, maternal rejection because then it's not like anyone's being like, I'm going to get a room share and I'm 7. Like we need our parents.
Yeah.
And so that fear, like it can't be your job. Your whole life can't be just avoiding rejection and confrontation. And yet I find that for so many women it is. And when we can stop and really believe, right, that you get to determine who gets to be in the front row of your life because it is an honor and a privilege for them.
Yes.
That is a flip, you know? Okay, you have the right to communicate your boundaries, your limits, and your deal breakers. You have a right to prioritize your self care without feeling selfish.
Hmm.
And then the last is you have the right to talk true, be seen, and live free.
I love this. I am so glad you wrote this book.
Thank you.
So glad you wrote this book. This is because what I find is that most people that I talk to, and why I'm in the game I'm in, and probably you too, is that this is the one thing people want more of. This is the one thing they want to step up more, speak up more, be able to, or they'll say things like, man, I wish I could say it like that. I wish I could say that, or, and I get that. And it's just so available. It just takes a little bit of practice. And it takes, again, like breaking it down how you do in your book to get to loving yourself, self-esteem. And but I want to say out of all those things, I really love the whole discussion about, um, you don't have, I don't have to answer you. Again, it's so strange when someone comes at you with a question. Again, it's this confronting thing, and if you can just take a minute and just take a second, go, okay, do I really, And I love that. I think more people need to do that because again, I think sometimes we end up in regret revealing something we wish we didn't, or we go into a whole thing and then we're like afterwards we're like, ew, that feels gross. Why? Oh, because I revealed something that like I really didn't want to talk about or
Yep.
whatever.
And actually, I've created something for your listeners that is simplify and do less with boundaries. And basically, we're hitting the emotional labor, because that's something that we have to be able to visibly see what we're doing in our relationships to be able to erect appropriate boundaries. We all have to be on the same page of like what work is actually getting done to keep this life going. So
Mhm.
that's one thing. Stopping the auto, yes. So I'm giving you guys the scripts that we talked about and those types of things. And then I give you something like a top of mind so that you can actually, for 24 hours, be able to really see anything that you're doing on autopilot, because there's a whole thing about auto accommodating that women do as well. I mean, listen, I guess men can do it too. My audience is mostly women. That's where I've mostly seen it. And then you're going to do the emotional labor inventory, which will help you see like, where are you overworking, overgiving, and doing shit that other people should be doing for themselves. So I think you're going to love it. It's a little video and it's these beautiful guides that I made for you. So they can find it at, hold on, let me tell you where, because I wanted to ask you, should it be boundaryboss.me/primal? Is that good?
Perfect. And let me go ahead and can you just repeat that one more time?
Sure. boundaryboss.me/primal. And then there'll be book information there as well. If people want to, pre-order the book, that'd be great. There's a ton of bonuses that go with that. We're having a huge party. If you pre-order the book, that gets you into our fancy party with lots of fun people.
That's awesome. And it comes out April 30th, April 20th, but available for pre-order. So get on it with all of these goodies and bonuses before the actual release date comes out. This is the best time to buy any book, really. Thank you. I'm so glad to meet you. I just, it's like you're just preaching everything. I think it's just so wonderful. I love that you've broken down this topic in such a deep way, in a way that only someone who has your breadth of experience really can. So I so appreciate your time and coming on the show. Anything that you'd like to leave our audience with before we just check out here?
Well, I want to say thank you to you because it was so fun and so easy. And yes, we're preaching to the same choir, but I appreciate the work that you're doing and what you're putting out in the world as well. So thank you. And what I want to say to your audience is you can do this.
Yes.
The changes you want to make, I promise you, they're doable. In this book, it is one baby step and then the next right action and then the next right action. Nothing massive has to happen. There's no bullhorn where you're like, everybody, we need to talk. We're not doing that. We're literally step by step,
Yes.
but it will really up level the quality of your life, and you deserve to be thrilled and fulfilled by your life.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And for
Thank you.
everyone else, we will see you all next week.